Over the next couple of videos, what I'm going to do is look at Android's version of making a connection to a database and handling string data. So far you've had the luxury of Python, which sort of does all of that for you. This is a bit more raw. You have to do a bit more work to get what you want. First of all, I'm going to put that strings back to null for the time being, and we'll deal with that later. There's nothing in that. It's just a mental or a visual clue for myself on what we're doing. So in Python, you sort of made a connection. You used a library called URLlib, and inside that library you use one of their functions. We're pretty much going to be doing the same thing here. We're going to be using libraries which contain data types or objects, which will help us build a connection to a database. I might use the analogy of making a telephone call to let you know what's going on. But first of all, we need to have a type of connection. We did that in PHP. We had a connection to the database where we had to use a word connection to actually contain a lot of parameters, which when it talked to the database, it sent in the username, the password, and what have you. We're going to be doing the same sort of thing here. So we're going to be using HTTP URL connection. Notice where it's coming from. It's coming from the library java.net. You may have to include that yourself if it doesn't put it in for you. Again, if we go through the menu sections here, we've got a good chance that it will actually build it for us. So that's my type, HTTP URL connection, and I'm going to call it a connection, and I'm going to set that to null to begin with. That's quite important. We've set up a data type. It can hold all sorts of information. We're giving it a value null. Null is absolutely nothing at all. It's not empty. It's not got empty strings. It's just null. It doesn't do anything. But if we don't set it to null, it might say, "Oh, I don't know how much space to allocate for this," and you might get one or two problems later on in your code. So it's always advisable to set variables to null. Now, one last thing on this HTTP URL connection. I've mentioned before that there are old videos, old tutorials that you could watch which tell you how to do this sort of information. However, this is Android 2 or Android Studio 2. It's moved on from the early days, and in the early days there was a set of libraries which came with Apache, which had a different sort of syntax. You didn't use HTTP URL connection. You had something called HTTP request, and at the top of your program in your imports library you had import apache.org. Now that has been what we call deprecated. In other words, it's not used anymore. You can use it, but if you do use it, you've got to set up Android Studio to go back a couple of years to that state, and that is quite a major task. So if you're watching videos and you're seeing import apache.org or anything in that line, then stop the video, find something else. Way we're doing it these days is through this. As you can see, it's imported the library for me, which is now java.net. So HTTP URL connection is one of the clues when you're looking at other people's videos, or you're looking at books in library or textbooks, to say that we're using the modern version. Anything else, you're going to give yourself a lot of work to do. So it's a big clue, it's a big hint. Take it, because if you don't, then you're going to have error messages, you're going to have variables in red throughout, and you're going to have to load a ton of libraries and turn back time on your Android Studio. and it will complain an awful lot.